There are obviously going to be changes. You mentioned that there's obviously now chat that Stendel might not even be there. Is there anybody who looks like an obvious replacement that could come in if that is the case?
Good question. At the minute, absolutely not, to be honest with you. There's just way too much turmoil over the squad, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I kind of agree with what James is saying in terms of the kind of manner in which this squad could quite easily fall apart in the Championship, or once the team go down to the Championship. There'll be a lot of players on contracts that will get chewed up upon relegation. There's actually a huge amount of players out of contract as well, if I'm not mistaken. Guys like Dika Momona, Bozanic, and even maybe guys like Connor Washington and stuff like that. A lot of their contracts come up either this summer or next summer, and they must be wondering, upon the arrival of a huge chunk of a huge pull out in terms of wages, what's going on here. I think unfortunately we can also maybe apply this to the kind of younger players as well. If I'm not mistaken, Andy Irvine, Sean Clare, Harry Cochrane, and even Aaron Hickey, all their contracts expire next summer. Hickey was apparently discussing a new contract towards the end of last year. We haven't really heard any resolution on that, as far as I can tell. Maybe it has gone through and I just haven't seen it, but it's quite interesting that we haven't heard anything from that since then. So you're talking 3 or 4 young players there who, in an ideal world, either Stendel or a new manager coming in could really properly build a proper squad around. But there's a good chance that a lot of them may simply decide to move on. Maybe not, for example, Harry Cochrane, for example. You can quite easily foresee him kind of stepping into a really good role in a Championship side for Hearts. Andy Irvine as well, perhaps. But guys like Aaron Hickey and Sean Clare could probably quite feasibly say, I'm ambitious, I've proved myself at Premiership level, and my projection or what I was hoping for my career didn't involve me going down to the Championship with Hearts. Hickey maybe is an exception because he's obviously came through the club. He might feel a huge degree of loyalty, but you wouldn't really fault these guys for thinking a season or two in the Championship doesn't really do my progression very well. And that's kind of the huge issue with this Hearts team. There's a huge imbalance in terms of quality and actually players that they want, and they might find themselves that the players that they want to build a squad around, if they go down to the Championship, are the ones who are actually leaving, and they might be stuck with these kind of older players who are on longer term contracts, on expensive contracts, which sure they might get cut off, but or they might get cut in terms of wages, but they're still there, and that might make the job even tougher for the next manager coming in. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I think there's a real strong prospect here of Hearts not being able to really fix this squad next season. Not only that, but there's also absolutely no evidence over the last 2 or 3 summers that they know what they're doing in that regard, because it is a very scattergun approach to bringing in players. There isn't anything. Doesn't seem to be a real clear sign in terms of how they want to build a squad, and it's not possible to maybe liken them to Dundee United, who really needed a good few seasons before they could properly build a squad for promotion, which is a shame, because I think with the right person in charge, or the right eyes looking at talent, there's a number of young players in the Championship and even in the bottom half of the Premiership who would probably move to Hearts for the money and for the allure of playing at Tynecastle, and quite happily spend a season in the Championship if it meant they're the main man when they go into the Premiership. For example, obviously Shankland at Dundee United is a good example of that. There's no reason Hearts can't find their own Shankland, but that relies on them getting their house in order from a coaching and a player recruitment point of view, and there hasn't been a huge example or evidence of that so far.
I guess just finally, unless there's anything else you'd like to add, James, we wrap things up, but what I was thinking there, again, I know we're playing hypotheticals, but it's kind of difficult not to at this stage, but I thought maybe someone like a Tommy Wright, who obviously knows the game really well, did a great job at St Johnstone, always was looking for that kind of step up to a bigger club and never got it. Is he somebody, and we know what he's done at St Johnstone in terms of reinventing the team and working with young players, does he not maybe strike you as somebody that could do what Stefan's describing? Not that I think it'll be easy. I completely agree with Stefan. I think it's a perfect. Dundee United are actually quite a good example where they didn't have the right squad, but also I think maybe even more crucially with Ray McKinnon and even more so Shaba Laszlo, the wrong person in charge before Robbie Neilson.
I think obviously Tom Wright's proven himself to be a very accomplished coach in Scotland. I suspect that he will end up getting the Northern Ireland job, so that might rule him out of any plans for Hearts. I would actually really quite like to see Stendel stay, because I think that if he could get his players working, within his system at that level, I think they could really I think they'd be absolutely brilliant. I think they could do a lot. And I understand that he has got a relegation release contract though, where if Hearts go down, he can walk away. Maybe he exercises that, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I do think that actually another name that could potentially be in the mix would be John Robertson in Inverness, who has an excellent record in the Championship. He's got an excellent record of developing young players, and obviously he's got that connection to Hearts as well. So that would maybe be quite a savvy appointment in the event that Stendel does go. But I think that'd maybe be quite a popular appointment as well, and that you've got a Hearts man, as it were, back in the dugout. So I think that someone like Tommy Wright I think he'd do a good job. I'd be maybe concerned that, obviously he's known for this primarily, being able to organise a defence. I think maybe some supporters would be worried that was going too much back to the sort of football Levine was playing. I don't know I think if they're in the Championship, Hearts fans will probably want to be seen to be playing attacking football, because regardless of who stays and who goes, with the budget that they will still have, they will have enough about them to have the best squad in the Championship next season. There's no question about that. So it's just about getting them to play good football, and I think that's what Hearts fans will want to see. I mean, you think of Robbie Neilson's side when they came up, they were playing excellent football in the Championship, really free flowing attacking stuff, and I think that's what Hearts fans will probably expect, just because of the stature and size of the club. They are one of the biggest clubs in Scotland, and if they're in the second tier, they shouldn't really be having to worry too much about it. I understand, I totally take on board your points that it could prove more problematic than it maybe first appears, but personally for me, I think that they'll probably walk that league next season regardless of who's in charge.
I think we'll call it there, unless Stefan, you have any more wisdom to impart.
Unlikely. All I would really add is that James kind of stole my suggestion as well. I think John Robertson's a great idea. I think he's done a fantastic job in Inverness under some really, really tough situation actually at the club financially, and I think the kind of unmatched dominance of Dundee United in the Championship this season has kind of masked what he's done at Inverness. So, and as James said, he's obviously got a huge appeal from the fans, and I think he obviously knows the Championship as well back to front. So, I think he'd be a really impressive appointment if Stendel does move on.